Welcome to ABA on Tap. I'm Mike Rubio with Dan Lowry. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and always analyze responsibly. All right. Welcome back to yet another installment of ABA on Tap. I am your ever grateful co-host, Mike Rubio, along with Mr. Dan Lowry. Mr. Dan, how you doing?
Good. An installment already in progress.
Installment already in progress. You're going to have to go somewhere else to get the first part of this. So, without further ado, our special guests today are Nicole Stewart and Christina Torres from the Reinforcing Conversations podcast. All right. So you could hear that maybe? Are you dancing?
A little bit. We got a little jazz music.
Okay.
The house band.
I wanted to know, this is like the first question I had for you guys.
Oh, snap.
Where did you get your intro music? Did you do it yourself?
And you mean for the whole episode? Like the very beginning? So I don't know how long you've been listening, but it recently changed. This season, we have a new intro. Okay. Before that, I put it together on GarageBand. I just pieced it together.
Very impressive. Yeah.
But I'm very proud to share. I'm so glad you asked this question. The intro music now is me and my son.
Aww.
Yeah, I play drums. I've been playing for a long time. And for as long as my kids have been alive, I've always had some sort of back line in my living room, meaning drum set and amps and basses and guitars, and it's in my living room now. So when he was about 7, he finally took to it, and he's a really accomplished guitarist, but can play just about anything with strings or that makes a sound. He just picks it up and does it. And I was after him for a long time because it was like, dude, please help me redo this intro music. Mm-hmm. And he was busy, and he's got his band, and But we finally got it done, and I'm super stoked about it. It was actually a minute long, and people were like, "That's too long for an intro. You're gonna have to chop it." So it was much more self-indulgent. Yeah, maybe I'll share that with you. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I would love to hear it. How old is your son now?
He's 20. Oh. Yeah, and I can talk about him all day. He, as a parent, I just went through the first experience of having a child move away, which has been interesting. Mm-hmm. And he's doing great, but it's been great to see him grow, to see him just develop as a musician. And I think if he wants to pursue this, he can. I mean, it's always a long shot, no matter how good you are.
Right.
But he's certainly garnering all the right attention, and all the right people are talking to him and his bandmates. So they just opened up for Yachty. So they just played their biggest gig, which was at the UCSB, University of California, Santa Barbara, indoor arena, which is 6,000 seats. And they opened up for Yachty, who's a much bigger rapper artist that I didn't know until he introduced me to him. But so that's where he's at.
Amazing. Yeah. That's so cool. Living his dream.
Living my dream, his dream. My older brother's dream. Yeah.
Everybody's dream.
I used to play. Used to be a little more active here in the early 2000s in San Diego. So he was raised on music and rock and roll. So he took to it. And I thought my other child, my 16-year-old, my daughter, when they were in elementary school, they had a little kids band. They were called the Accidental Green Bean. And they used to play these gigs. I thought for sure they were going to be a little duo, but she dropped off from that. We'll see. We'll get her back in at some point.
A little Seven Nation Army kind of thing.
Yeah, she does show choir, so she's still singing. We'll get her back in the mix.
She can do some backup vocals.
Yeah, for sure.
Harmonies, things like that. I don't know. I'm just saying words.
It's so interesting. She's I don't know if she lacks confidence or she gets a little bashful, but all her brother and I want when we jam is for her to come grab the microphone. We're always like, just come sing with us. And she won't do it.
So his daughter just got her license last week.
Oh my
and
gosh.
I remember when his ex-wife was pregnant, because he used to work with his ex-wife who I worked with at that company. And I remember when she was pregnant with his daughter. So I can still only see her as this little baby who used to walk around the office, who apparently now is old enough to have her license.
I know. It's crazy, isn't it? Just how quickly this life goes. The day, like when people say the days are long, but the years are short.
Oh, man. It's crazy.
Never a truer sentence of parenting.
She just took the car out for the first time, at least our car, out for the first time last night. So, I mean, she's newly licensed, like last week or something. So, yeah. She was like, yeah, can I go to a sleepover? Yeah, can I take the car? It's like, you're going to take the car all night. Okay.
Okay, I guess that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it made it back safely. She might be roaming around out there. I
Oh.
think. Yeah, I think that it was hammering next door.
Legit.
She knows we're podcasting. Why is she hammering? I don't know. Teenagers, right?
Do you ladies want to maybe introduce yourselves to our audience?
Oh, yeah.
We had a
Please.
great conversation back on the Reinforcing Conversations podcast, right? Did I say that right?
Yes. Yep.
Reinforcing Conversations podcast. We'll link you in our description as well. Hopefully you all can hear that. Nicole and Christina, would you ladies mind telling us, our audience, a little bit about yourselves?
Yeah, Christina, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm so excited to be here to share communities.
Woo!
I'm such a
Thank you.
community girl. So I'm Christina. I have my own platform as well. It's called ABA Made Easy Online. I do a lot of dissemination, mentorship. I do a lot of live shows on Instagram and on TikTok. And I'm really passionate to empower BCBAs to go independent and help support the future leaders of our field.
Excellent.
Yes.
Right on.
Yep. And I'm Nicole, and I do some things on social media, but nothing like Christina. But I do a lot of dissemination on ADHD and how we use ABA for ADHD, and then workshops, trainings, lots of different things for organizations, really bringing awareness. Even if you work in the medical model and think that you mostly see children with autism, the comorbidity between ADHD and autism is like 50 to 75%.
Sure.
So you probably have a lot of kids with ADHD, and when you don't realize when you don't know what you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
you don't realize that you could be actually harming these kids. And so I feel very strongly about people better understanding ADHD in our space, whether you work in autism or whether you're looking to expand into a different diagnosis and a different way of delivering ABA. And then I also do some training things, and I teach at Hunter. And I connected with Christina a few years ago because she was looking for someone to pick their brain about being independent.
Yeah.
And then I saw her explode on social media, and I was like, man, look at this girl go. Like, I meet with a lot of different people who are like, maybe I'll go independent, maybe I won't. And Christina was like, psh, like a rocket. And I was so inspired by her journey that we started collaborating on dissemination of ADHD. And then we just really enjoyed talking to each other. And we thought maybe other people will like listening to us talk to each other. So we started our own podcast.
Nice.
And you ladies are 2 seasons in, 21, 22 episodes. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, so we're recording our 3rd season now. I think you guys, this is our 5th, will be like our 5th or 6th episode of our 3rd season by the time these are released, which actually we'll have to coordinate. I didn't think about that.
Oh, yeah.
So talk to us about the learning efficiency here. Like if you think back to episode 1 and the mic setup, I mean, what have you guys learned? Because I understand our own progression. It's, if I hear back to like season 1, we just re-released at the end of last season. We needed to cover some ground. So we re-released our first episode, and I just happened to go back and listen to it. I'm like, oh my God, I sound terrible. Like, I'm not saying that I listen now. I'm like, oh, I sound great. But you develop a flow, and the ums, for example, maybe I've gotten a little better at the ums.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, tell us about your progression here. What do you guys
just say
think?
maybe I've gotten better at the ums?
Right. Exactly. Well, exactly. Pun intended. I'm very. I mean what I say, Dan. Go ahead.
It's definitely evolved. I still get stuck on the intro. I'm always like, welcome in, guys. Like, I go live all the time. I'm like, what's up, guys? And it's like, okay, girl, you got to get it together. What am I saying for this intro? How am I welcoming us? Am I saying Nicole's name too? And I'm saying just my name. So we're still kind of shaping that up.
Yeah.
I think it's the deliberate parts that trip us up when like we, reference our sponsor or we're saying goodbye. Like the outro trips me up too. So, yeah.
So do you ever script anything? Like, so you are feeling confident about that? So we had a sponsor with Magic Mind for a little while, and
Cool.
it was a bit of a pressure situation, right? Because I'd have to generate our own ads. And yeah, if I tried to like riff it, we would riff, and then I would try to riff into the ad, and it was like, no way, man. I'd have to write it down because otherwise I felt like an idiot. I was like stumbling over my words and repeating my words and just not saying anything meaningful. But
Yeah.
And Nicole does a really great job creating these amazing guides for us. Like, so it does have the intro prompt, and then we usually have like questions to help us navigate the conversations, but we just kind of like yap and it just flows naturally.
A teacher creating good visuals, that sounds legit. They do the best.
Yeah, I have to have a lesson plan.
Oh, I was going to say, I bet it's all marked with time signatures, and at this point in time, Christina's going to say this.
And then we do, as I feel like is true in like the natural environment, we follow absolutely none of the lesson plan, but at least we have it, and I think that helps if we get stuck somewhere or, kind of need. And I think that that's evolved too, because I think the lesson plan, like at some point we were really like, I was trying to be really statistic heavy and really cerebral. And I found it I'd be like, but I didn't get to talk about all my statistics.
Well, it's tricky too. Like we just did that episode on the white paper, and we ran into the same thing. We actually ended up recording that one twice because we did it once, and Dan had delved into all the statistics and stuff. And during the first run, when he was trying to organize that, I think you just felt like it was a little scattered. And then luckily we were able to do it again, and he felt better about it. But yeah, it's almost like if it's too scripted. And we've had this discussion because from the video to like how much more production work do we do, whenever we've scripted too much of it, it's like you're going back to your notes and all of a sudden you lose the spontaneity. And then there's the other end of it, which is you're too spontaneous and then it feels really loose. But I think I feel pretty good about our flow so far. And I'm sure you guys are feeling a lot better than that first episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I feel like there was a point where we started working with guests. I don't know if you felt this way, where I got comfortable with Christina, and then we've added a guest, and I was like, are we interviewing them? I feel like that took a while to kind of shape up, and like, what is the purpose of the guest? What are we doing with, are we just chatting with them? And so I think we've gotten a lot better at that too. And that, for me, that was a growing pain. I think Christina's much more natural at just like talking about anything. I felt like I was like, when do I talk? When does she talk? I don't know what to do. Yeah.
Yep. So speaking
of pausing.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Sorry, my bad.
No,
just pausing. Right? It's like, okay, what do I say next? Especially when someone shares so much information. Because when people are talking, it's like, oh my God, you have an idea to insert a question, but then like 4 other topics come, and it's like, oh my gosh, I forgot what I was going to say.
Yep. That's why I write stuff on my phone. Sometimes it looks like I'm texting, but they're questions because I ask a million questions.
I have a notebook.
There you go. So I do have some questions on the podcast on their end. We just spoke with Christina about bringing ABA out of the medical model, which was awesome. Please listen to it on their podcast. She had some great anecdotal situations, including some big wins and victories in her home state of Connecticut. So shout out to you again, Christina, for that. I have some questions for you, Nicole, you talked about the low dose model and the ADHD. But before we get there, I want to ask both of you ladies, maybe just a little bit of your origin story. So Christina, how did you get to being the BCBA and like where you are now? And then Nicole, kind of the same thing, because I'm sure none of you when you were in like elementary school were like, I want to be a BCBA. Mm-hmm. So how'd you get there?
Yeah, I feel like this is a story similar to so many, right? It was all by accident. Mm-hmm. Like my undergrad is actually in criminal justice. And then I actually moved down from Connecticut. So once I graduated my undergrad, I moved down to Florida for a year and had so much fun. And then I'm like, okay, girl, you're getting old. I was like 24, 25 at that time.
Old.
I'm like, go back home, right?
You feel old at 24.
Your prime is gone at 25.
Right? So I went back home and I'm like, I was struggling trying to find a job in my space. And then I ended up finding a position as a life skills coach and a community mentor for adolescents and adults with autism. And I really loved it. And it was pretty cool, but it was just a per diem. And then I was like, okay, I found a full-time position as an ABA therapist in a school district that was nearby. And I'm like, okay, let me try working with kids, And then once like that first week of working with our friends, I was just like, wow, what is this? And then I'm like, how do I make more money? Because this is exactly what fit my personality. And then as soon as I found out I had to go back to get my master's to become a BCBA, that's when I kind of dove really deep into this ABA space, making sure to get exposure in the homes and the clinics and the communities with adults, and then trickle down to early intervention. And then obviously becoming a BCBA and kind of shaping myself from there.
So life coach, then working with people with autism, then you're like, okay, now I want to get my BCBA. And then so you got your BCBA, and then you worked kind of in the, I'm going to call it the common field for a little bit until you had your daughter. Is that daughter or son? I'm sorry. Daughter, right?
Yep, my daughter.
Daughter. Mm-hmm. Until you had your daughter?
Yes. So I was in the field for about like eight years when I became a mom, and I shared on our episode earlier that I had my daughter at 25 weeks. So this is her diaper actually.
Oh, wow.
How big it is.
That's incredible.
So after having my daughter and being in the hospital for 4 months, I got home and I'm just like, you know what? I can't go back to the typical medical model. I need to start my own practice. I need to be able to have flexibility because I knew we were going to be in and out the hospital for a while. So that's when I decided to start my own consulting practice and started disseminating online and sharing my story and kind of pioneering my own space in our field.
How long ago was that? Did you have your daughter? How old is she now? 4.
She's going to be 4 next month. We're trying to figure out what to do for her birthday party. But yeah, she'll be 4 next month.
4. So you've been doing
Keep it
your
as
own
simple
thing
as
for
you can.
4 years.
Yeah.
Good for you.
It's going to be 4. ABA Made Easy is going to be 4 in October.
That's amazing.
How exciting.
Right on.
Yes.
Nicole, how'd you get to where you
I'll
are?
get started.
Yeah.
Well, as a child, I wanted to be a behavior. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, wow. That would have been a first for sure.
I thought you wanted to be
When
a
my
little league
parents
umpire.
gave me my first Skinner box for Christmas, right? Is that...
My mother actually toilet trained me using M&Ms, so that was my first experience with ABA, and I just knew from then on.
Tell us a story about how you like raised pigeons, like carrier pigeons or something, right on your rooftop in New York City or something. Come on.
When my mom
Amazing,
sat me down at the IKEA table and chair and handed me my DTT cards to learn my
Yes.
colors.
My first token economy, my first star chart.
Amazing.
Okay.
I
We
can't
gotta
wait
let you
till
go.
people grow up and say they always knew since they were a kid they wanted to be a behavior analyst.
That
right?
could happen in the near future. It could.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was not my story. I did always know I wanted to work with children. Like even as a child, people would say that I was always good with children, which is like kind of maybe a weird thing to say about a child because I was a child. But I was like, I wanted to be a pediatrician or a teacher or an actress or Katie Couric. Those were my
Oh,
options.
wow.
Okay.
Yes, I'm not Katie Couric.
Bummer.
So here we are. But I guess that lends itself into like that I like training and podcasting and dissemination because I do like public speaking, which I think is that piece. So I decided, I was pre-med in college, did the whole like organic chemistry. I even took it over the summer to get myself accelerated.
That's everyone's
then I
favorite
signed up-
class. OChem. OChem 1 and 2.
Oh, yeah.
No way.
Did you take it also?
I sure didn't.
Oh,
I did.
you took it?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, we have a lot in common. Yeah.
I tried chemical engineering for a little while. We won't get into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like really love science. I love how it makes sense. I've always been a science person. My brother's a lawyer and he was the history person. And I've always been into science to the point where my parents did a really good job where I didn't realize how rare it was for women to be and girls to be interested in science because they did such a good job encouraging it and normalizing it.
Oh, wow.
And just being like, yeah, cool. You want to go to like a math tournament? Great. You want to like do science camp? Like I did a camp at some point that was like building your own electrical things out of, circuit, like building your own circuits at some point. My mom was like, great, whatever. It's nearby. Great.
Nice.
And so I was pre-med and then I signed up for the MCATs and I'm a very bad test taker. I took the SATs like 7 times.
man.
I took the ACTs. I was like, we're going to do everything.
Cats.
And I think the MCATs freaked me out. And the whole idea of like, it's going to take me another 10 years to get there. And I don't even really know where I'm getting to. And I don't know if I want to do this. Kind of like, existential crisis at 20 or 21. And so then as part of my public health major, I had to do an internship. So I went to a career fair and the New England Center for Children was there. And I was like, oh, cool. School for kids. That's cool. I'll work at the New England Center. I'll do an internship there. That sounds great. And my first day, I was like, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. This makes sense to me. It's like, I still know the like exact moment that I saw one of the kids that I worked with. And I was like, can I work with that kid? I want to work with him. And he was like one of the more challenging kids to work with because he had a lot of what we called back then non-compliance, but now what I would call is like withdrawing assent, where he would just lay on the floor and refuse to work.
Sure.
And that's really hard for a new person and really not reinforcing when you haven't been in the field for very long. But I was like, I want to figure this kid out. I want to understand. I want to get him to like me and I want to get him to want to do work. And like, I want to work with this kid and figure this out.
So almost like a math problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel you.
And so I interned there, and then I worked there after graduation, and they offer master's programs. So now it's completely subsidized, where they pay the entire cost if you work there. When I went there, you had to pay $200 a course. So my master's was $2,000. It's like 10 courses.
Nice.
And I got a master's in teaching. And then I worked in some public schools in Massachusetts. And then I moved to New York, worked in a private school that was very similar to the public schools I worked in Massachusetts. And then kind of moved up, and they started a center, and I became the clinical director there. And then I got really burnt out for reasons, we've already discussed about COVID and divorce and life changes. And I started my private practice and really dove into the ADHD space. And I'm really enjoying that space.
That's so much similar to your story about like working in, because you worked at the school at Stanford and found the kid. It's a real similar story. So that resonates a lot, I think, with us, working, not even knowing what you're getting into and being like, oh, this might be it.
Yeah, for sure.
So you talked about, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
ADHD. That seems to be a big passion of yours. I could ask some specific questions, but let me just open up the door. What you want to talk about with ADHD, Nicole? I'm sure you got a lot. I don't want to limit your breadth
we could
of
go in any direction.
ADHD. What do you like? If you were to give a presentation, or what is most interesting? What do you find most fascinating? What do you think the listeners would like to know most about ADHD?
Yeah. What's the particularities with that comorbidity, for example? Since we probably have a good audience in terms of understanding ASD. Talk about the comorbidity features, for example. That might be something that all of us can use a little enlightening on.
Yeah. So I think, ADHD is often referred to as an executive functioning deficit. And so I think you see when somebody has autism and ADHD, you see this executive functioning, which is like all of these skills. It's the executive functioning is like the CEO of your brain to get you to execute tasks and to organize them, to remember things, to be able to execute something on demand, to be able to recall something on demand, all these different skills that you're using. And then when you have somebody who has autism who's maybe rigid, those two parts of their brain can often clash. And so you really have to be conscious of like, I'm putting in a routine for somebody knowing you have ADHD to make things easier for because that can really, like, routines are really helpful for ADHD, right? Because you automate it. And so instead of having to recall this information, it's like a task analysis where you're like, okay, I put on my shoes. Now I always put on my jacket. And then I always know I grab my keys after I do that so that I don't forget anything when I'm leaving the house. But somebody with autism, now you have rigidities. Mm-hmm. And if that routine needs to deviate, you might have behavioral issues or sensory issues that come in. And so like that can be really hard to understand when you're working with someone of like, how do I deliberately program these TAs to be generalizable and meaningful for this executive dysfunction, but also keep in mind that they need to be able to do this across many different contexts because they still also have autism. And I think like that's a way I really see it show up.
That's cool.
And a lot of like the task analyses and routines. And then I think also sometimes when the ADHD is really an issue, you see that impede on their ability to learn those tasks because it's so like, especially inattentive ADHD, I think I'm noticing a trend. I don't have any scientific data for this, but a trend where people with inattentive ADHD tend to have poorer executive functioning, whereas people who are more hyperactive, I see as adults, tend to have stronger executive functioning skills because I feel like it's almost like that energy, that hyperactivity energy goes into these coping skills of making lists and keeping myself organized and creating my routines and compensating. Whereas like inattentive, it's like, oops, I was supposed to get on the train. Like,
so what's the difference between inattentive ADHD and ADD?
So ADD isn't really used anymore. Like the DSM-5 got rid of ADD. So I guess that's the difference is that, they like to change the names.
It's the two subtypes still, right? So it's just inattentive or hyperactive?
Hyperactive, okay. And then there's combined.
Okay.
And so like both of my kids have ADHD, although my younger son's not yet diagnosed. I likely have ADHD.
Sure.
Christina.
I feel like I probably do as well.
Yeah.
Christina?
Yeah.
What? Did you see? That's the inattention. It got her.
I would say Christina's more hyperactive if I had to guess, right?
Mhm.
If I had to make a diagnosis, not that I'm qualified, as I always say
Only
to my
when she's paying
clients, I'm not
attention.
qualified to diagnose, but
So what would you say, Nicole? Because I get this a lot from parents, same thing with autism diagnosis, right? Where people are saying, oh, like it's overdiagnosed, it's not really a thing. But more so actually with ADHD, people saying, oh, like they just need to learn to behave or it's not a thing. In my day, like people just didn't get the diagnosis, they just learned to behave. What are your thoughts on that?
well, I think yes, and kids learn to behave, but at what cost to their, I think, to their
Yeah.
self-esteem. And there's a high rate of sexual abuse, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, unemployment, domestic violence, all of those things within the ADHD population. And I think that's, so maybe they're not like they were diagnosed later or they didn't receive proper treatment, but like those are all reasons I think to get diagnosed, because even something, I've done a lot of research on medication. My son is on medication. He's very open about it. ADHD medication, people are very hesitant to put their kids on medication because they're afraid they're going to be on it forever. But the right medication can actually lower your, and also like I was also scared of this, that if he's on Ritalin and he realizes he loves Ritalin, is he going to abuse Ritalin? Is he now going to like be like, oh, I need the Ritalin, I have to have it? And they actually find that people who take stimulants as they need it and appropriately, it lowers their risk of drug and alcohol abuse in the future because they're using it as they need it and appropriately, as opposed to like a reacting to a bad situation.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
The medication part. So you had to buy into it, so to speak. You were hesitant at first.
Yeah, I had a whole existential crisis.
Well, talk about that a little bit, because
Yeah.
I think that you're right. I think most parents are going to be, and then you're talking about stimulant medication, which is a concern. You're talking about the idea of addiction, and I like the point you made. The idea is that you're taking it systematically as opposed to as a means of escaping or coping, which is probably constitutes a huge difference in terms of the detriments or potential detriments later. So, what was what shed the light on you where you went, oh, let's try this thing out? Or maybe you had to try it first. What was your experience?
Well, it's kind of like the same. Well, so he was not diagnosed with ADHD at first. So he was diagnosed, classified as gifted and anxious. And then the anxiety started really impeding on his sleep. And our pediatrician was like, it's the anxiety. Like, I could put him on a sleeping medicine, but like the anxiety is the core problem. So let's put him on anxiety medicine. And the anxiety was what kept the ADHD in check, which I think is true for a lot of girls with ADHD as well, is that like the masking, the anxiety like prompts you to mask and keep and internalize it. So you'll even see like girls who might be hyperactive, their brains are lit up inside and they're sitting there. I mean, like, I feel like I'm a good example. I shift occasionally. My kids would have moved across this entire room. Like, they cannot sit still. I also can't sit still, but I do it in a much less noticeable way. And so the anxiety, like without having anxiety, his ADHD was like, whoop. And Christina, did we know each other by this point when Jack was going through all this? You don't think so? It was fourth grade. So
No, we
2020.
talked about it on the podcast though.
Yeah. And he's talked about it. He's very open about it. And so I knew immediately. I was like, this anxiety medicine is not working for you. Like within a week, I was like, this is not working. And I kept like, no, you got to trust your gut. You got to go, like, you got to just wait. It's not even to a therapeutic level. You got to keep going. And I was like, this is not going to work. And then we took him off of it. And the doctor was like, all right, maybe we should look at ADHD meds. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I felt that if meds helped him, what is my whole job? If I'm doing behavioral therapy and teaching kids coping skills and emotional regulation, but he needed meds to do that for him, what am I doing personally and professionally?
Wow.
Like, and so it like put me in a weird headspace where I was like, but I shouldn't not put you on meds because maybe you need them.
Right.
But like, is this now going to like upend me?
Interesting. Some
Because
cognitive dissonance coming in there for sure.
Yeah, I know. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this. And then I was also just very nervous to put him on another medication after like the Zoloft was such a disaster. And so I made a data sheet and I took data on him every day for 2 months. And then I had AI graph all my data and like give me, and like I just kept it because I was like, I want to make sure this is working and it feels good and that this is the right thing for him. And you know what? It helps, it reduces his cognitive load during the day so that he is less reactive and more able to access the tools that we have worked on for years.
Perfect.
And that's what medication does. But without medication and mommy's emotional boot camp for years, he wouldn't be the same. And I feel like it allows him to develop his self-esteem, and it like takes the edge off for him so that it's not like, oh, by 8:45 in the morning, he's now been reprimanded by me and his teacher, and a friend has told him to be quiet. And this person, like, he's not getting as many corrections. He's not working really hard to hold himself together. It's less friction in his life. And I don't know, like, yeah, go ahead.
No. I mean, it gave you more to reinforce, I guess. It made things more accessible for him, but for you too, as a parent, to be able to go, yep, let me reinforce that behavior and that behavior and that behavior, where maybe he wasn't admitting those necessarily. I work with a client, and for some reason, the parent, I think we've had good discussion on medication. And one of the things that I like to talk to people about is side effects, like therapeutic effects of medication, are things that we can reinforce and or discourage. And a lot of times I think, like, almost like you started discussing it, we think about it in isolation, where they're going to take the medication and that's going to fix everything. And then what did I do behaviorally? And it's like, well, I recently had this discussion where a kiddo changed medication, and Mom's like, yeah, it's going great. He's so agitated, but he's asking a whole bunch of questions. And I'm like, and that's annoying to you? And she's like, it is. And I'm like, but he wasn't asking them before. He's seeking information. And she's like, yeah. Oh, and I'm like, so just answer as many of them as you can. And then at some point teach him that mommy needs to take a break from the questions, and then, have him write them down or whatever it is. But I like the way you describe that, because I think we do tend to think about it as separate, and we forget that that medication is going to lead to some sort of behavioral outcome that we can reinforce, and then it kind of works together. So yes. Yeah. Neat stuff, man. Yeah. What a good progression for you and your son, and now he's killing it on the baseball field. He said 2 doubles today. Is that right?
He had 2 doubles today. I know. I'm so proud of him. And he's just...
That's killer,
I will
man.
say baseball, and like, I don't know how many parents listen to your podcast, but for parents who listen to it, my number one recommendation is find the things that your kid loves, because especially if they have ADHD or autism or any, need, because he is much more willing to, and I see this with my clients too when I give this advice, they're much more willing to overcome these hard cards that they've been dealt when it's in the name of something that they love. And so I see like his empathy build, his self-control build, his, because it's like pairing, right? Yep. Like you're pairing these hard skills with this environment that you absolutely want to be in and show up in. And so, like how he works for his teammates and his commitment to his team, all that stuff, those are lifelong skills that he's going to have and that he's learning as being part of a baseball team.
That's the whole strength-based approach. Yeah. That's what we're talking about there, right?
Currency, right? Yeah. You got to find your currency, something that, because so many things he probably feels like he has to work so much harder than his peers at, something that he's effective with, like his currency. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for Christina here, and hopefully it doesn't get too personal, but your experience in the NICU, that's fascinating, behaviorally speaking, and so many other levels. But I guess what it makes me think about is often, one of the obstacles that we face when we're providing treatment is we're very much expecting in vivo contingencies to occur as we plan them, meaning I present something and then there's your response, and then I can consequate that response, and so on and so forth. For you as a parent in the NICU, you had to do a whole bunch of things without necessarily getting any feedback in return. Is that fair to say? I don't know if you care to share about that experience a little bit. I mean, there's so many things that, in terms of handling, touching, managing, just things that weren't necessarily leading to any immediate response, but you had to trust the process.
Yes, absolutely. So which is a little crazy, a little backstory. I had a friend that actually had twins maybe like 3 years prior. So I was already exposed to the lifestyle of the NICU, of understanding like this is just temporary, right? So when it happened to me, I understood like, okay, we don't know when she's coming home. I understand the process. She was so fragile. I actually had to wait like 2 weeks to actually hold her for the first time because she had to be in the incubator and then like schedules of reinforcement, right? So every 4 hours is when they do the care times where you put your lift her up like this and then they weigh her and then you could change her little diaper. So I knew like, okay, every 4 hours was an opportunity to really feel like a mom because really you have to just kind of like, it's like set it and forget it. They got to grow, right? There's really not much you can do. So and also too, like, you know, in that type of setting, it's almost like, you know, like we were at Yale. So there was over 100 nurses. So, you know, and this is just routine for them coming in, doing the checkup. So for the nurses, she's just like another client, right? But to me, it's like, oh my gosh, I wanted to make sure I had the primary nurses. We had 2 nurses that I knew that I trusted because they would always share and like discuss things. But then, you know, with the nurse's schedule, they work 12-hour shifts. So they're working for 3 days and then you're gone for 5. And it's like, oh my God, you know, but I did a lot of, you know, I had a calendar that would help me go through and I could measure how many milliliters and how many ounces was she weighing every day.
Talk about data tracking.
Yes, to kind of reach these little NICU milestones to really help me go like get through it and just to be strong for her. And then like when she would hit little milestones, they create a little like, you know, really cute art project like, oh, hit 1,000 kilograms or first diaper or first outfit or first bath, you know. So it's really cool to kind of see the progress. But also too, you know, it was great that I was kind of keeping record and data because I would be able to kind of share my concerns. Like I remember one time she gained a whole entire pound in a week. And that was not normal, you know, it's like, and she would actually behave different. I'm like, why? Like, you know, it was just unheard of. Like, how is she growing so fast in such a short time when we've been here for like 3 months and she's kind of gaining at a couple ounces a day? So it was really important to kind of take data and analyze and ask questions because it's so fast paced in the hospital.
Yeah.
You really got to advocate, even though if you don't know, it's like, you know, like, hey, can you let me know what's going on? Or, you know, like I remember one time her lungs collapsed and no one told me. And it's like, well, why is she acting like, oh, well, her lungs collapsed. So we have to put her under size so that she was like, well, who was going to tell me, you know?
It's so customary to them in the NICU, right? Oh, yeah, this happened. It happens all the time. That's what we do here.
A lot of delayed reinforcement for sure. But
oh, wow, what an amazing journey. There was something that Nicole said that I want to branch off of. Did you have anything pressing you wanted to jump in on?
I have one for Nicole and Christina, but if you have one first.
So you said you kind of juxtaposed the idea of non-compliance versus withdrawing assent. I think that's a really important thing to talk about in this day and age in our field. We certainly have to shoulder some pretty strong criticism sometimes. I can't say that all of it is undeserved. I think sometimes I hear people talk, you know, or lend harsh criticism of ABA treatment, and I kind of have to go, yeah, okay, I remember that. Yeah. Both of you kind of talk to us about that. What does that mean? Where do you think we are as a field? It's nice. It's easy to change your vocabulary, but then your practice stays the same. You know, that's a hard task that we're trying to do in terms of evolving. We talked a little bit on your platform about, you know, sort of the history. We mentioned regional centers. You think back to like, you know, this all really came about like 1964 Civil Rights Act, right? And then we had the Education Acts, and clearly there's an inherent progress that we've incited because we're sort of forced to look at certain demographics or certain populations of people differently now, meaning we can't continue treating them the same. We have to evolve our perspectives and our views. And a lot of that is, I think, again, you know, maybe attributed to some of our success. And then actually going through that evolution is really hard. So what does that mean to you guys? You know, what is non-compliance, you know, versus withdrawing assent, and how do we actually make sure that we're making the right changes as a field?
So it's interesting because, like, with the kid that I described, the first one I worked with, I feel like back then at New England Center for Children, like, I did basically what I would do now. And I feel like there was some kind of loss somewhere in the middle where if he was laying on the floor, I wasn't forcing him to get up off the floor. I wasn't forcing him I wasn't sitting on the floor being like, touch red, touch yellow, touch this, touch that. Like, I wasn't like forcing engagement. It was like, oh, you're unmotivated. There's nothing here that motivates you. And until you have motivation to sit with me at this desk, whether because you like me and you're well paired with me, or the reinforcer at the end or the activity we get to do next or whatever is motivating enough, you're not going to get off the floor. And so I feel like I learned from that experience that it was almost like competing contingencies. And so it was about making myself or the activity that we're going to do or the activity in progress more motivated, the next activity more motivating, so that you would want to join me. And I didn't have the language to say withdraw assent. I feel like I called it noncompliance because that's what you would call
That's
it.
what we all called it,
back then. But I didn't necessarily approach it from like an extinction based place of like, oh, you're avoiding work. I'm going to force you to do work until I don't have to force you anymore. And I think that then there were spaces where I did do that, and it works. But I also think like at what cost? Like to that. And I think like I'm a very like, let's preserve his self-esteem and rapport at this point. So that's my practice has almost come full circle back to where I was originally of like, okay, you don't want to work with me. Like I'm here anyway. So like, I'm going to sit here and read,
I got all day.
Smartphones.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I'm going to sit here and read my magazine. I'm going to make myself a snack. And sometimes that would work too. Like we would kind of like bait the environment where like, I'd go make myself a snack and then come back and I'd be sitting there eating cookies and he'd be like, cookie. And I'd be like, oh, come on, come join me for cookies. Come sit at the table.
You're going to change your behavior before you expect him to change his.
Yeah. And like, but I wasn't like desperate, and I see that a lot in texts nowadays where they're like desperate to get the kid to come back to the table. And I feel like that is like you're teaching the kid that all the good stuff, you're going to break out all of the good stuff until I come, like whenever I lay on the floor.
Sure. I think that comes from one of two places, the desperation. One is the parents there. And then if you don't respond, then you feel like the parent doesn't really know what's going on a lot of times. So they're like, well, the parent's going to think I don't know what I'm doing if I don't do something.
Yeah.
And also the more historical approach of ABA is we got to do 10 trials and we got to do 50 programs. So we got to do 500 trials in this day. So we got to keep it moving. I got to get these trials. It doesn't matter if he's staring at his fingers. Like I got to still ask him, like you said, what color yellow is.
Yeah.
Which is still, I'm sure, still done a lot, even currently, which is mind blowing. But I think maybe that's where it comes from, one of those two.
Yeah.
Well, I think there was
Christine.
No,
go ahead.
I think there was a big emphasis too. I think something that we've stopped saying or people have moved away from is this idea that we're fixing something. And I think that gave a whole lot of impetus to like, well, it's got to happen now and it's got to happen at a certain pace and it's got to look a certain way. And then Nicole, you said something interesting in terms of considering the learner's like self-esteem, and those things. And maybe we've gotten better at considering that from unique populations. Maybe we've been, oh, hey, there's a self-esteem there. It may not be communicated the way we may envision it. But yeah, it's not just about forcing somebody to do something, although maybe it started that way. Yeah. But yeah, it's been a cool evolution. Yeah, Christina, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I always love to share with my students and the techs and even families and people that ask questions all the time. Like when it comes to behavior, right? It's like, you got to ask yourself these two questions. Is it a skill deficit or is it a will deficit? Mm-hmm. Do they have the prerequisites to accomplish
Can't
this?
Or won't.
If not, then that's a prerequisite. Yeah. Is it willing? Are they willing to? Is the motivation there? Is it more motivating to escape? You're going to give them a math problem with 20 questions. So what if you just say, hey, Johnny, I just want you to do these 3 or fold the paper in half so it's not so overwhelming to look at, right? And then people kind of look like, oh, dang, that's a good question, right? And then another component I love to share with them too is that, you always got to meet the learner where they're at. Yeah. And it's like also consider processing times. So sometimes your learner might take 30 seconds. I always share this story. When I was working with the adults, one of my learners, I would go to his apartment. He had a checklist and I would, check off, did he wash the dishes? Did he do his bed? Did he, all this and all that? And I remember I sat down and I was like, let's say his name is Meg, like, oh, hey, Meg, how was your day today? And I'm a person that counts. I count the steps I go up the stairs. And so I just started counting and I got to 30 seconds and he acknowledged me and he's like, oh, it was good. And you know what he told me? He said, thank you so much for being patient and waiting for me to respond because it just takes me a bit to process. And I share that story every single time to my therapist because it's like, now think about it. If I ask them, oh, how was your day? Hello, 30 seconds. It's a minute and a half. When it's like, just wait. ABA is considered intensive because we have a longer duration. So what is the rush? What is the rush? Right. So that's kind of like what I share. And people really have those light bulb moments like, dang, let me just wait. And I tell them, just wait 10 seconds, count 10 seconds, like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi.
Mhm.
Time is a contract, right? It just goes by so quickly. But what if we just sit and wait? And like, you'll notice a difference.
I mean, that debunks the whole myth there that somebody can't, right? You waited just long enough to go, oh, wait, you can do this. And it takes you this long. And so now I know how long I have to wait. And then maybe we work on reducing that, or whatever the case may be. Or maybe we work on other people understanding, hey, give this dude some time. He's going to answer you. Just give it time. That's a great example. I really appreciate that story.
One question for each of you ladies. So something that we talked about earlier that you said you had some thoughts on. I want to come back to that. And Nicole, you talked about the less hours is more. I want to talk about this. You got some thoughts on it. So what are your thoughts on it?
So most of what I do is low dosage. So
Or low
I guess
dosage.
for
That's
my
the word you use. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Christina actually coined it. So we're going to send the royalties to her every time we use it.
Okay.
All right.
But most of what I do is low dosage. So working with kids 1 or 2 hours a week, or working with their families, doing parent coaching where the parents are then managing, whatever we talk about to implement. And they're not doing like discrete trials with their kids, but, behavior management or antecedent interventions, things like that. But I really felt open to it, not for my ADHD kids, but I worked with a kid virtually during COVID who was maybe 4 or 5, nonverbal, like mostly, non-vocal, and actually didn't have another way to communicate. So I guess nonverbal. And we worked virtual for 30 minutes a week because that's all his parents could afford. And we did this for a year. And by the end of the year, and then he had to transition to school. So it didn't fit in his schedule anymore. And by the end of the year, we could have a whole session, and he'd be like, hi, Cole. And we talk, literally, and he'd say I don't know if you guys have heard my cat meowing outside the door.
I have not.
But he would say, where cat? And he'd say, where Hamilton? He would actually we had this whole routine script where he would say these 1 to 2 word phrases. And then I'd be like, I'd turn my computer in different directions, and I'd be like, is Hamilton here? And he'd be like, no, try again. And we created this whole script, and then he was using this, the nanny would sit in on our virtual sessions. And so then she would carry over these things and do hiding games at their house and then expand the language. That 30 minutes was life-changing for them. He was communicating. He was able to communicate, but I got him to focus on very specific communication targets in this 30 minutes. It was a very predictable session. Every single time we did it, we did the same exact thing with the cats. And it worked. And he was not nonverbal by the end. And he was able to vocalize a lot more. And I just started with just modeling. And because he was interested in the cats for some reason, it worked really well. And it was 30 minutes a week. And that was it. And I feel like that's
on Zoom with a non-vocal individual. That's amazing.
Yes.
Good for you, man.
And I was like, again, one of those existential crises where you're like, why do we even do everything we do if that was so effective?
Yeah. Well, it was 30 minutes a week of your services. But if the parents are trained, then they're able to do, 23 and a half hours a day if they want.
True. And so the nanny would carry it all over, and then they would see it succeeding with the nanny, and then they would do it. I would meet with the mom once a month, and then she would be like, what can I do? And so it's not perfect, but I'm giving her targeted strategies of model this language. We're working on these where questions. Here's the language she's able to do. You do it.
Christina?
And so,
sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
No,
go ahead.
Nicole.
I have no idea. Go ahead.
Christina, where'd you come up with that term? Do you have any input on that?
Low dosage, is that the
Low dosage?
Yeah. Did you have any additional input on that you wanted to add?
Well, when I came up with the term, honestly, I forgot.
Okay.
I forget a lot.
It was helping me brand
it's
myself.
ADHD coming
She's
in
just
again.
generating content, man. You can't have her pinpoint when it happened. Come on.
Yeah. No, you were helping me brand myself, and you were like, well, you do low dosage ABA. And I was like, no one has ever phrased it that way.
It's all individualized by whoever I'm talking to. So it's like, okay, tell me and I can come up with something. I love this game. I like being slick.
Yeah.
We love that though, Nicole. That's how we do it. I don't think any of our clients get more than 4 hours a week. And that's even pretty rare. So we hear, sometimes we'll get patients call us and they'll be like, well, this clinic said I have to do 25 hours a week or I can't go to their clinic.
Yes.
Are you going to make me do 25 hours a week? It's like, how do they know that your child needs 25 hours a week before they even meet your child? Like, what is that?
Well, they do.
Their minimums.
Yes, exactly. Is that for your child's benefit or
because
is that
the
for
research
staffing?
says, Dan, the research says,
which is the Optum
25
article, right?
hours, which is back to the white paper, right?
Yeah, in 85, maybe that was the point.
Let me ask this: where does the shift go into high dosage? Is that based on hours? Is that based on each individual learner? I don't know the answer to that. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, Christina, I feel like you could talk about this because you work in a lot in EI, and I think EI is a space which actually we often tend to give low dose. So like EI, state-funded EI services tend to be like 2 hours a week or maybe 2 hours a day. But I actually think you feel very passionately, Christina, about more hours for littler kids.
EI being early intervention, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I started with adults and trickled down to early intervention, and especially like as soon as they age out of the birth to 3, like I was mentioning before, right? From birth, once you get a diagnosis at 3, you go to the school district, and then you're in school, right? Monday through Friday from 8:30, 6 hours a day. And a lot of our learners, especially at that age, they're all struggling with attending, sharing, emotional regulation, FCT, right? Being flexible, transitions is another huge one. So I think it's one of the things that I'm really passionate about is early intervention and knowing, like I mentioned before, like it is considered intensive because we have longer duration, right? So like we do have 25 minutes to help a learner regulate their emotions because the tower fell during blocks. We can practice sharing, especially with being able to help them kind of build that stamina to attend for 10 minutes of circle time or attend to an activity and engage in arts and crafts so we're not feeling rushed, especially having like that one-to-one support. So I'm definitely a fan, especially around that age of, if they were going to be in a school setting or at daycare for 40 hours a week, kind of being able to kind of customize a plan that supports them to give them those prerequisite skills to practice all those essential skills that they're going to be needing once they are streamlined in the classroom. It's definitely meeting it where they're at, but I'm definitely a fan of more intensive therapy early on.
And I like your sort of rebranding of the word intensive there. I think people automatically think a high amount of hours, and you're saying, well, we might have that, but more than anything, we can take the time to sit back and focus on very specific. I really like that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think that's a better way to look at it. Yeah.
Because think about it too, especially in the school, they have service providers. They got speech on Tuesdays for 30 minutes. Well, guess what? It took 15 minutes to transition to your classroom, and now they're having a tantrum. And now, guess what? Their time is over, and they're out of that their time. And they're on to the next class, right? So it's like, who's going to generalize those skills for a learner? I will naturalistically throughout their environment the 25 hours, 30 hours that we have them, right?
We're going to practice 10 transitions and get you really good at this.
That's
so
really
you can
good.
speech.
Schedules.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. What do you do? I make sure the child can transition from this place to this place. And then when they get there, but that's exactly what we do, right? We take those unorthodox situations like, oh, so they're making it this far out of the classroom and they stop there. That's where we pick up. And then, once they get delivered to the speech therapist, then our job is done and they've, we're good. But I like that story there in terms of how it conceptualizes what, some of the tasks we take care of is literally just trying to get Johnny from the classroom to a speech therapist quickly so that he can get the full, 28 minutes of this other necessary intervention. That's nice.
So it's not necessarily low dosage, it's like low direct dosage because they're still getting it. They're just getting it from their parents. And if we can train the parents to do it, then it's even better, right? It just means we don't have to
Who's
be there.
administering the
They don't
dosage?
have to accommodate our schedule. They can do it within the context of their schedule. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think parents implement ABA with a high fidelity usually.
That's interesting.
But I think that they take behaviorally based strategies. And I think I always say to my parents, I'm like, kids don't come with guides. And then you have a kid who has a uniquely wired brain that really doesn't come with a guide. And so I help get to know your kid. And then I give you, I say okay, your kid is really triggered by this. Like I had a kid who struggled to sit still at the dinner table. And so I had them get a motivator. and use a motivator, and he sits at the dinner table now. Like,
Sure.
super simple intervention, doesn't need a ton of ABA for it. Mom just needed a motivator and then like directions on how to use it, and like maybe modeled once. So I guess like in that case, yeah, mom is implementing it. But
That's true.
I also think it's like,
Although parents are always
parenting-
manipulating
yeah.
consequences and antecedents, whether they know
Yeah.
it or not, right?
yeah, right, exactly. Like parents are doing things are reinforcing or punishing behaviors anyway. And so their previous intervention was they yell at him to come back to the table.
There you go.
So I
Yep.
gave them a new intervention.
And the kids are always better than the parents at ABA. Kids are masters at figuring out how to
Yeah.
manipulate all of us. I do have one question that I do think is really important. I do want to ask you, Christina, but before we do that, just the intervention. You talked about early intervention. So that's always been Mike's kind of cup of tea as well. He's worked with regional centers, which do what's here is 805 early start intervention. And it's actually really changed the way that we do our services, which kind of vibes, I think, with what you're saying. I don't know, Mike, if you just want to briefly tell them
Yeah,
kind of
sure.
how you got to where you are with how we do our services, because it is pretty assent based on his whole experience with the early intervention.
I'll try to be brief because I do get excited about these things. But
Yes.
so I'm actually a developmental psychologist by training first.
Oh.
And I had early experiences professionally where I got to work in these idyllic laboratory schools where, I mean, everything is built in and around 2 to 5 year olds. And there's a lot of child directed approaches. So long story a little shorter, I became very interested in where that, I guess professionally I worked in that setting. I got very good at corralling the 3, 4, and 5 year old boys that work in packs and you know, they run in wolf packs and they're kind of destructive and they bother other people and they just kind of like working in groups. And for some reason they would gravitate to me and I could make them sit at snacks. So all my colleagues would be like, oh, you know, you might be good at working with kids with behavioral issues. Oh, okay, let me go try that. And I remember going from this idyllic laboratory school to now this non-public setting that was, you know, all treatment based. And just the stark contrast in the enrichment of the environment. And I knew why one environment was very barren. It's because kids were knocking things off and throwing them. So let's put these things away. And then now you've got this super sterile environment that isn't very enriched. And okay, so this is a stark contrast between the way we treat these kids and the way we educate these kids. So I've always, from the very start of my career, become very interested in trying to, I guess, close that gap, right? And early childhood is a really good place to do that for many reasons I won't get into. But I guess what we started exploring was the overlap between ABA early intervention and best practices in early childhood education. And what that led to was a lot of child-directed or client-directed approaches where we were waiting for those things to happen. And then all of a sudden, we could delve into something they were interested in and build that rapport. And then before you knew it, you're introducing new things and you're doing the more adult-directed piece. So I guess when we were doing that with our staff was a little skeptical at first, and then they really enjoyed it because it was almost harder for them to be spontaneous and impromptu as opposed to these elaborate plans that we can have in ABA where you've got your visual schedule and you've planned out this activity and you've already picked this stimulus for that activity. So there's very little wiggle room and it's very structured, which sounds very strong until that plan fails, right? So this other, shifting gears was like, yeah, well, you can actually just within reason follow the child. And then once they're interested in something, you delve into there and you build from there. So that led our staff to start asking questions like, can we do this with older clients, with adults? And so that, opened up that conversation. Well, yeah, very much the same. It's not us coming in with such an authoritarian stance to say, you're going to do what I say when I tell you, but it's coming in and saying, hey, let me connect with you. And then before you know it, we've got some level of collaboration where you are able to do these things that I've taught you that you weren't doing before, that now maybe make you more accessible to your environment because you're reinforcing to your environment as much as completing these tasks is now reinforcing to you. So it's been a cool progression. It is something I get very passionate about. And I know why we have specialized treatment, and no way am I being critical of that. But I'm always curious about not having it be so distinct for two different populations. And I think early childhood really lends to that because, it's a 3 or 4 year olds. You can kind of make things converge a little bit better as opposed to having highly specialized early intervention. It could be a little bit more like a good preschool program, and you're playing. It can be play-based and child-directed, and then you can get a lot of that the more structured learning tasks done as well, because now you've paired, now you've got rapport, you're reinforcing to the child. They know you'll give them access. All those things that we try to establish as part of our instructional control.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. I think another thing too, that's a big part, is that, you need to be intentional with the time and being mindful of manipulating the environment in a way that's going to promote learning and promote opportunities for our friends to be exposed to these, contingencies that's going to promote more learning and more curiosity, and like never stop building rapport with our friends. Like I have a learner, he's got a lot, oh, he's escaping demands. It's like, no, his body is telling me he needs to move. This is a friend for 12 seconds,
That's
right?
awesome.
And it's like, listen, I don't want you to see it that he's escaping. Like, no, his body is telling me, like, oh, I gotta move. So allow him to escape. Model on and say, oh, I need a break, right? And give him a couple seconds, and then we'll try to bring him back for this, right? Yeah. And then I was also telling, we have a couple new staff, and, one of our friends is a little bit more demanding, and like, you got to be on your feet and stuff. So I was just saying, like, I'm going to place, his program right here, and I'm going to start with his highly favored. He's hyperlexic. He loves reading. So watch me we use the First Work app. So it's a digital DTT. And so he's, engaged with his toy. And I was like, now I'm just going to place it here. And like, if he looks over, he's going to be able to actually transition to work without having me to prime him or anything. And they were like, oh my God, this is somebody that was working with a friend that can't sit longer than 12 minutes. And we just sat for 10 minutes without any hard demands. And he's motivated, he's engaged, he's complying, right? But it was all about helping her see things from his lens and a behavioral perspective to help her feel more confident supporting him,
Yeah, that intentionality is so important. That's something that we talked about our previous company with the admin time. RBTs were actually able to plan for their sessions before they went out so they could be intentional. Even at our current company, we allow some, so they're still able to plan for it. I mean, that's not the norm in the field. Usually they have to, they only get paid for the hours they're directly with the clients. So there's no real planning. It's just go and do whatever, you can try to do in that session with no real intentionality, because you might still be getting over the client you had 20 minutes ago that you drove to the next client.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? Also thing that I love to do too is like in the programs, I love to give multiple exemplars of what I know would count as a plus or a minus in their environment. So it's like, oh man, if he pulls your hand, if he points to the door, if he does this, I'm giving you all the ideas so that you don't have to think. It's like, I'm giving you 5 things. And then generalize those other 5 things. So if you see this plus, this counts, like helping them generalize outside of just one modality. That's
and
like
they don't just have to mand for SDs you've presented either. They can just mand without any SD presented by the RBT. Imagine that.
Yeah. That's always, I find so hard, where I'll be like people, I feel like a lot of people take away those opportunities because they just do things for our clients.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait till if you give him a bag, don't then open the bag. See if he opens it himself or hands it back to you, or like, just do something. Like, I feel like there's like a lot of learned helplessness and like almost like pity for our clients, where people are like, I'm going to tie their shoes for them. No, wait till he asks to tie his shoe, or like indicates, even just holds up his foot, like some kind of indication or communication, or maybe he'll try and maybe he'll do it. Who knows? Like, I've had kids where I'm like, oh, look at you. You figured out how to do that.
Imagine that. Yep.
It's such an interesting dance back and forth between that. I mean, you want to be intentional, you want to be structured, you want to plan. And then what we're talking about here is a good part of that time that plan's going to fail. If it's anything we know about our learners, they're built to sabotage your better plan. And then you better have something. Yep. You better have something ready to then steer back towards your plan, or go, oh, wait, we can spend some time on that because that happens to be part of another program. And I think that's a real challenge, I think, in the field for any young professional in the field, to learn how to pivot and shift that way, learn how to do the shuffle and the dance, knowing that we can spend so much time developing these beautiful linear programs. And if it's one thing we know, is it's probably not going to look the way we envisioned it. There's going to be some circuitous roundabout way that we're going to get to that desired response.
Well, I think that a lot of RBTs will plan, like, I'm going to run this, I'm going to come in and we're going to do a snack.
So he's
going to make a snack and he's going to do this, and then we're going to clean it up and da-da-da. And then like you come in and the kids already had a snack and they're like, I don't know what to do for these 20 minutes. And so like you just see, I feel like these green RBTs, you just see like the plan actually needs to be, here's what I'm going to do. But like, let me think through some other scenarios of like, well, what if it's raining, or what if this happens, or what if that happened? Like, your plan also needs to include some of those what ifs or things like that.
Yeah.
You know, that it like I feel like a good plan isn't just here are my 10 programs. A good plan is actually like, here are my 10 programs. What am I going to do if he has a behavior? And what am I going to do if he asks to do something else? Like,
and I may not
what's
get to
my
all
plan for
10.
that? Yeah.
And I may not get through all 10. And that maybe is okay, but I can't just get through one or two every time. I need to build up toward those 10 based on the plan.
Right.
And yeah, it is. It's such an interesting shuffle, I think, especially for those younger pros. And a lot of it can be self-imposed. A lot of it we might inadvertently impose on them. A lot of it's just kind of performance anxiety. I want to do well. If it's 10 programs, I got to do these 10 programs. And I like the way you're pitching it, which is, no, come in, you have a plan. And then it's probably not going to look that way. And that's okay. You're going to recreate that plan. You're going to build, you've got all the ingredients for a cake, and you might have to leave a couple out, which means that your cake's a little flat, but it's still cake. It's okay. You got it done, and then you try again the next time.
I have one question I gotta ask you, Christina. So you've talked about like being big on social media and branding and things like that. Honestly, the reason that we started our own podcast is because of the brand of ABA. And I feel like it's taken a lot of reputational hits.
Yeah.
Like one of the clients Mike had right before COVID came to us and was like, if the people in my Facebook forum knew my son was getting ABA, I would get like disowned because, it's like traumatizing. And we would post some of our initial podcast on Facebook, and just like comments would be like, ABA is trauma. And I would try to go back and forth, and they're like, I'm not going to talk to you BCBAs or, abusive and etc. So we created the podcast to say, okay, what's true, what's not true? Because we don't want to be dismissive of these people's experience. We want to educate people. Long story short, I feel like ABA as a brand maybe leaves a little bit to be desired in terms of how people are feeling about it right now. So coming from someone that's so in tune with branding, what are your thoughts on ABA as a brand, and any suggestions kind of for the field as a whole on how we can maybe look to improve that?
Good question.
I'm like, that's a big question.
That's a damn good question, sir.
I cannot wait to hear Christina's answer. I'm so excited.
Christina, go for it. Take us away.
So, one of the things that stops a lot of BCBAs, especially like starting their own brand, is because they're afraid of people that are anti-ABA, right? And honestly, I think I probably could count on my hand how many people have been like so anti-ABA. Actually, when I started TikTok, there's a lot of hate. So I actually used to duet other providers that used to like bash our field, and then actually duet and share like, oh, this is an ABA strategy. This is like explain what ABA was going on in those videos to help generalize that, hey, ABA looks like this too. And you're actually doing ABA. So that's why I'm so passionate about dissemination, and I actually use videos of me and using ABA with my daughter and helping people see that ABA is a science of human behavior. And there's so much that goes to it besides, like the history that we're coming from, right? And I think it's also so important to always acknowledge, like, yeah, people have been harmed. And, ABA is a science, and it's all about how you're using this science. So, as the ABA brands, I think it's getting better, but, we all had to have started somewhere, especially like the ethics board. Like the field is like 40, 50 years old. It's not that old. And like, if you actually look like because we did a whole CEU, me and Brenda, neurodiversity affirming practices. And I did a whole timeline of the history. And you can actually see like, even like, if you were gay, that was in a DSM-5 as a disease. And it's like 30 years later it was, removed. And then also neurodiversity affirming practices. This has been coined in 1990. It's 30 years old, but it kind of just started to kind of pop off recently, like 2 years ago. And I think it's very important for people to realize that change takes time, and we are literally in the middle of change. So knowing the information that we have right now is going to dictate and shape how the field is going to move forward in the future. So I think it's important to be aware of where the field has come, but also where the field has yet to go. So I'm a really big fan of ABA. I'm a little ABA cheerleader, and it's like, please share your experience. I love to share my behavioral approach to things and help you see things from a different lens, especially, like for people that only think like they don't even know like making a sandwich is a behavior. Like that is absolutely a behavior. You know what I mean? Like behavior is literally all around us. And it's another big thing is like the environment piece. I feel like people forget it's the environment that shapes how we behave and respond and react.
Yep.
So how can we improve our brand? Then is it by looking at people, like you said, and showing them how what they're doing is actually ABA, Any other suggestions? Because brand doesn't even like, when you said that initially, I mentioned it's not something that ever enters my conscious because I'm so old, but it's so relevant. And ABA as a brand, I think,
Especially
is
with
not
social media
not good. And with social media, right? I'm sure half the people that said ABA is traumatizing or ABA is abuse, they wouldn't go back and forth with me. They just said it and left. So a lot of people just want to say something and then leave. But yeah, I'm really interested in how we can improve our brand as a whole.
Well, that's another thing too, is like, we cannot be the brand of ABA. You are your brand yourself, right? Because there's a lot of providers that have their own take, like their own niche, right? Some are anti-ABA and some are pro-ABA and some are this and some are that. I love to represent and disseminate in the areas that I feel confident in. And like at the end of the day, I'm in charge of what I'm going to reinforce, acknowledge, accept, allow, or things that I'm going to put on punishment, right? So when it comes to like seeing the science as a whole, I'm not representing the science as a whole. I'm representing me, myself, and my space in ABA. So I think if you're coming on and you want to kind of brand yourself, be authentic, stay true to your values, and you will form your own community. And listen, you're not supposed to be a part of everyone's not going to like you. You're not everyone's cup of tea. And I share that all the time. Some people like me. Some people think I'm annoying. That's fine. But I know I want to add value to my community. And if you are joining my live, if you are purchasing my resources, if you are sharing the impact that my page has had for you in your life, that means the most to me. So I literally mind my business. I just show up in my community and my business, and then I go live, and then I unplug myself.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Nicole, you want to add to that?
Yeah.
The ABA brand.
It's interesting because like I think that it's not a bad practice, but there are bad practitioners. And that causes harm. Like I said, like I feel like when you don't understand, which is part of our ethics code, like if you don't understand that a child has a dual diagnosis of ADHD and autism, or I work with a lot of kids also with I kind of work at like the ends of the needs of like kids who have ADHD and may appear typically developing, and then kids with rare genetic disorders who like may use walkers or, like may not be fully ambulatory or may have agenesis of their corpus callosum. So they actually have like brain malformations. Yeah. And so I feel like it's even as simple as that is like, if you don't take all of that into account, which I think ABA does not teach us, like ABA programs often do not teach us to take those things into account. Then you can cause harm. So if I'm trying to teach a child how to, like I had a kid with 2 genetic disorders, not 1, 2. And when we would teach him signs, he had to use signs that referenced something else. He couldn't just like, like all done or something like that. He could do like finished because he needed something to ground his movements. If I'm trying to teach him to say all done and he's not making progress, he's going to get frustrated, and that's going to be a bad situation, and that's going to feel traumatic for him over time if I keep trying to teach him these signs that he's physically not able to do because of his proprioceptive awareness. And so I feel very strongly like what I'm hearing myself say is that it's a training problem, and that I struggle with the fact that and this is my hot take, that the BACB keeps restricting like CEUs and things to behavior analytic content to a point where that could do more and more harm. And I think like a lot of I've always worked in multidisciplinary settings. I think there's like 4 of us providing ADHD training in ABA. So where do you think I learned about ADHD? Not in ABA. I had to go to psych programs. I had to go to social worker CEUs that I'm not getting credits for. And you have but that's how I had to learn about the neurobiology of ADHD, because you have to learn it. In order to practice with it, I have to learn it. And so I think it's a training problem that we have. And we need to be teaching practitioners to really understand their scope of competence and the risk of harm.
Very much appreciate that. Before I ask him anything to plug, anything you had to...
No, I think we're good. Can you guys believe this hour's already passed by? We're an hour and 15 minutes. We could talk forever. That's dangerous. So we'll have to do this again.
Yes.
But,
yes. Ladies, both of you, what would you like to plug to our audience again? We'll put everything in the description, but let me open it up to both of you on how people can find you, anything you would like to plug, any of your works.
Well, piggybacking off of Nicole with the training,
Okay.
her and I collaborated with the ADHD Exchange, which is a 10-part series for BCBAs and everyone in the space to get CEUs on understanding ADHD a lot clearer. So you guys could definitely check that out. I'm on social media at aba.madeeasy with the E and a Z. We go live on TikTok on Tuesday mornings, like around 10 o'clock in the morning for behind the scenes of our recordings on our podcast. So you guys could join us there and just follow our social medias at reinforcing that conversations.
Cool.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's most of them. I have my own website, NicoleStewartBCBA.com. So businesses want trainings or more education on ADHD or workshops or to find our CEUs easily. All of that's accessible on my website.
Yes. And one more thing.
Yeah,
we host business mentorships, and my second business mentorship, I host it once a quarter. So the second cohort this year is coming up. So if you guys want to start learning how to go independent and start your own practice, whether it's a medical model or consulting or other avenues, please reach out.
Cool. Well, I always have to end with a toast since we're ABA on tap. So here we go. Give people plenty of time to respond. Consider low dosage. Champion the ABA brand. And
always analyze responsibly.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers.
Always analyze responsibly.
ABA on Tap is recorded live and unfiltered. We're done for today. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. See you next time.